Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 38 minutes past 2.
Yes, a new poll has shown that 2 in 5 Britons believe Muslims cannot integrate into British society.
Well, the report also found that more than half believe the country's national identity is disappearing due to diversity.
Yes, the polling of British Muslims, however, did find that 85% are in favour of integration and 88% saying they mix comfortably with other faiths.
So, what do you make of all of this? Is there an integration issue with British Muslims?
We're joined now by the chairman of Pickthall House, Mustafa Wasi, and author and head of public policy at Christian Concern, Tim Dieppe. Thank you both so much for joining us, gentlemen. OK, let's come to you first, Mustafa. What do you make of this poll? I mean, it's, I think, frankly, quite shocking results.
I agree. I think that it speaks to the sorry state of the country as a whole, and also of the general narrative of why things are going the way they are. Because it's not simply the case that, the fact that there are Muslims who don't integrate are resulting in people's lives getting worse. It isn't the reason why people's bills are getting higher, why people seem to be unable to find jobs, why their lives seem to have no meaning, why the fertility crisis is still underway. And so there are a whole host of issues that are plaguing the country right now. As you said so yourself, 55% of Britons believe that too much diversity or too much immigration or 30 years of systematically appalling governance has resulted in the total erosion of the national myth of this nation. And so people are upset, both Muslims and non-Muslims, and people are looking for a narrative to explain exactly what is going on in their lives and to explain the sorry state of affairs in the country as a whole. The fact that Muslims are a relatively salient narrative, the fact that it becomes easy to target a wide group of people as a result of a fairly simplistic brush is therefore naturally reached on. But it will only ever make it harder for us to actually address the problems that are plaguing this country because we don't have an accurate account of what's going on in the world at large, which is largely a 30 years of failed governance, a failing economy. I agree, way too much immigration, enough that you totally lose sight of a cogent national culture. So that's like one part of the story, the idea that there is this erosion of a national myth and the grasping for a new narrative.
OK, Mustafa, we'll come to another part in a bit, but we need to get Tim to have a word in now. So, Tim, what do you say to that?
I say that as long as 10 years ago, Baroness Casey did a review by the government into integration, and she found that none of the people she questioned, none of the people she asked, hundreds of people, all said, this is a problem, we need to do something about it. We have Sharia courts, we have Sharia finance, we have Islamic banks, we have, in the last election, a national political campaign called the Muslim Vote, trying to get Muslims voting a particular way. That claimed they got 50 MPs that they backed in that election, now elected as MPs. In the last local election, had dozens of sectarian candidates campaigning specifically for the Muslim Vote, MPs specifically campaigning on Islamic issues. We have polling revealing that Muslims 57% want halal food compulsorily in all schools and hospitals. 32% think it should be illegal to have images of Muhammad. 32% think Sharia law should be what we have in the UK. We have Church of England primary schools teaching children to pray to Allah. We have schools being advised, do not allow kids to draw pictures of Jesus. We have a government official definition of anti-Muslim hostility, giving special privileges to Islam and Muslims that other religions do not have. We have Ramadan lights in London. We have iftars in cathedrals. We have rape gangs with 18% of the prison population Muslim. This is not integration. This is actually cultural change. This is what people are concerned about. They see these things, they're aware of them, and they think, gosh, what has happened to this culture? We've seen it change. It's becoming Islamic. We already have one local authority that is governed by a purely Islamic political party. How much more of this are we going to see? How far is it going to go? At the moment, we're on track to becoming an Islamic state, an Islamic nation. That is the trend. That is the way we're going so far. And it wouldn't surprise me that's where we end up.
Mustafa, that's a strong allegation. We are in danger of becoming an Islamic nation. What's your response?
I think that sounds completely ridiculous. I think the Ramadan lights and the fact that Muslims express an arbitrary internal preference in accordance with their beliefs to eat halal food isn't hurting anybody else and certainly isn't infringing on other people's quality of life. This is distinct, however, from a host of other issues, right? Some of which accord neatly with the notion of what constitutes perfectly acceptable practice in a liberal democracy, and some of which does not. And so, for example, let's take two cases. An example would be the Ramadan lights, which are privately funded and privately maintained and privately held and perfectly legal. And so that's something that Muslims just wish to celebrate, much the same way that there's a gay
it's cultural change. It's cultural change. That's the thing. We didn't used to do that.
Let Mustafa respond.
Sir, I'd appreciate it if you let me finish. I mean, I'm told that politeness is also one of the hallmark British values that indicate integration in this country, right? So it's important that we let each other talk. I think that the Ramadan lights are a good example, or even eating halal privately is a perfectly reasonable example of somebody expressing a personal preference within the context of their private life, or celebrating their faith in a totally non-intrusive fashion on the public. It's much like the gay pride parade. Now, so that's one thing that I think is just par for the course. It's just a question of people expressing what they want. However, notions of ghettoization in particular communities, sectarian voting patterns, or teachers like the guy in Batley feeling threatened as a result of parents going nuts because somebody drew a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. This is unacceptable, right? This is like a horrifically bad thing, and does in fact testify to the fact that this has been allowed, does testify to a failure in governance. So I agree that these are things that do in fact infringe on other people's lives in a fashion that is entirely improper and entirely out of keeping with what it means to be British. So the question is not simply one of all Muslim practice being incompatible or being shoved on the community. The question is, we have a law. This law is decided as a result of democratic legislation and argument and free discourse. We are, in fact, an enlightened liberal country. And once we agree on a set of laws about how to engage in the public square, those laws ought to be equitably enforced in a way that is rational, clear, and transparent. And that's it.
Okay. Mustafa, let's come back to Tim. Tim, what would you like to say?
Thank you, Mustafa, for agreeing that we're seeing changes in culture here. We're seeing people afraid to say something about Muhammad or criticize Muhammad or draw pictures of Muhammad. We've actually seen people arrested for criticizing the Quran or raising questions about the Quran. We've seen people prosecuted for burning the Quran. We've seen people, the whole rape gang thing has happened because people are afraid of being accused of being Islamophobic or racist, all of that. We have a severe terror threat level today, and Islamist terrorism is far the greatest driver of terrorism in this country. We've seen massive cultural change in all the various ways that I've seen, and this is towards Islam. This is gradual Islamization. It's things that we never used to take for granted, never used to consider British in terms of the way we did things, have started to become normal and accepted part of practice and accepted part of this nation, and that is a change. And this is what people are concerned about when they say we're not seeing integration amongst Muslims.
Right. Gentlemen, I'm so sorry, we've run out of time, but Mustafa, we started with you. Tim, we're going to have to finish with you. Like many of these conversations, this could go on for so much longer. I know you both have so much more to say, but thank you so much for joining us and talking through this particular issue.